I'm wearing a shirt that has a bunch of like desert plants on it, you know, like cactuses and stuff. I'm not sure how I feel about this sense of fashion, but we're just gonna roll with it. Anyway, hey everybody, how you doing? Tekking and Barry back again. Today we're gonna be making a video about the 9 red scabbards, and we don't have anything in the background that can fit that description. First and foremost, the lights are blue. They're not the 9 blue scabbards. That's if they become pirates. If they all decide to join up together and become a pirate crew and go out to sea from Wano, they would be called the 9 blue scabbards, right? Also, green. If they were the 9 green scabbards, they'd be like, I don't know, a team of druids or something. They would all be about nature and stuff, so that just wouldn't be interesting. But we have the 9 red scabbards because red is fire, and nothing can stop fire. You know what I'm going to show. There it is. Okay, there he is. Also, I don't have any figurines of any of the scabbards, so that's unfortunate. I would like a Kinemon one, maybe a Kawamatsu. Kawamatsu would be better. But until then, here's a sexy cowgirl Robin with a bikini. That'll have to suffice. Okay, I think we're set. All right, so today we're going to be talking about how the scabbards did during the battle at Onigashima, because you have to think about it like this really was their arc, and whether or not you like the scabbards, like, did anybody out there seriously think like the scabbards had a shot at defeating Kaido? I don't think anybody really did, because at the end of the day, you know Luffy's going to fight him, you know Zoro's going to get some hits in, Lawn Kid were also there, Killer, can't forget about Killer, so I don't think anybody had the idea that, like, yeah, the scabbards were all going to rush Kaido, and they were going to beat him down, and that's how the fight was going to end, right? And as we saw, I mean, the scabbards didn't even get close to taking down Kaido to, like, even half HP, you know? Like, it wasn't until, like, a good chunk of the way through the fight with the worst generation that Kaido even felt it necessary to go into his hybrid form, and that was when he finally announced, like, you know, oh, this is starting to get fun, Lin, ha ha, whoa, you know, that kind of stuff. So, you know, the scabbards, they tried their damnedest, but you gotta remember, like, they went up against Kaido still, like, they still did that, okay? That's more than I could do, that's more than you could do. Like, let me ask you a question, like, if you knew you had to go up against Kaido, all right, let's just assume you wake up tomorrow morning and there's a letter at the foot of your bed and it's written in sort of this scribbled, drunken script, and it's just like, hey, dumbass, tomorrow, noon, I'm coming to beat you up, you know, and it's like, it's signed Kaido of the Beast, and it's like, oh crap, all right? You know, like, what do you do? Where do you go? You can't run and hide. He is a dragon. He will find you no matter where you hide, okay? You have to fight Kaido. You know, what do you do? I guess, I don't know, you could go to a Home Depot or whatever, and you could buy anything at the Home Depot. Like, what do you do to fend off Kaido, all right? So, yeah. Anyway, we're going to be going through each of the scabbards, and we're just going to be talking about their individual stories and how they did in the war and all that kind of jazz. And we're actually going to do this in chronological order, which means we're going to start with the very first member of the scabbards that was ever revealed in One Piece. You know who it is? Yeah, that's right. It was Kinemon. No, it actually wasn't. It was Izo, because Izo showed up way back during Marineford as a member of Whitebeard's crew. And Izo was an original member of the 9 Red Scabbards, okay? Not like O-Kiku, who was like second generation. Like, O-Kiku was not an original member of the Scabbards. You know, she became a member after Izo left, you know, later. But yeah, Izo was the first member. So how did he do? Here's the thing. He might be dead, because we did not see him in the last chapter. So, last chapter, we have all the scabbards arriving at the Flower Capital, spoilers, by the way, and they're announcing, you know, they're you know, bowing before Momonosuke as he gives his epic speech, and they bow before him as he walks into the palace and everything, and it's very epic, and it's very, traditional. It's like the new shogun is crowned and all that kind of jazz. We do not get to see Asura Doji amidst this group, and we also don't get to see Izo there. So I originally assumed he was there, and I went back and checked, and no, he's not. So it's like, oh, wait, yeah, he kind of had that fight to the death with the Cypher Pole Zero, and he was already very critically injured by the time he fought them, and he took down one of them. He took down Maha, but then Izo collapsed as well. I really hope he's not dead because Izo has been through a lot of shit. You know what I mean? Like, not only did he have to deal with everything involving Onigashima, like Wano, Kaido fighting him and everything, but just also he has the extra burden of being one of the last, commanders of Whitebeard's crew and everything, So it's like, okay, he has to live up to Pops' memory, kind of in a similar vein to Marco, where Marco has this big, like, weight on his shoulders that he has to sort of live up to Pops, I mean, even though he knows, like, he's a free man, and Marco even said that to Big Mom, like, we're not taking orders from a dead man anymore, we're all free to make our own decisions and our own paths in life, but I still feel like Marco and Izo and a lot of the other Whitebeard commanders, the ones that are still around, probably feel like, okay, we have to take down Blackbeard at some point, we have to avenge, Whitebeard's memory at some point, and Izo was there as well, but not only just with Whitebeard, but also with Odin, okay, so he's got, like, the best of, or the worst of both worlds, basically, okay, and I think that's why he was so dedicated, even though he was brutally injured, he had this massive gaping wound in his chest or whatever, in his, like, the side of his body. Even despite that injury, Izo was still pushing forward, and he's still like, I need to fight, okay? And, despite, because we didn't get to see a lot of him during Marineford, you know what I mean? Like, we saw him at Marineford, we saw him there taking out his pistols, firing some shots off, but we never had, like, any focused moment with Izo at Marineford to really see how strong he actually was. He is a really powerful fighter, and the fact that he uses firearms as, like, a main weapon is also very unique, because, honestly, in a manga about pirates, not a lot of, like, super strong characters actually use guns. There's a few, like Ben Beckman and Van Auger and everybody, Yasop, for instance, but most of the time when we see a character use guns, it's usually just random marine riffraff or some random, like, waiters or pleasures of the beast pirates that have, like, flintlocks or whatever, Izo has, like, specially made pistols that fight that way, so I'm really hoping he's not dead. He went through Marineford, he went through the Payback War, he got a 6 scar from that. We could go the Kubo route with it and just have him lose an arm. Kiku lost an arm, so, I can't remember which arm Kiku lost. I think Kiku lost her left arm, so Izo can lose his right arm, so we could have, like, it's symmetrical, if nothing else. I don't know, but I hope Izo is not dead, alright? Even if you want to say the argument of, like, none of the Scabbards died, it's like, so all of them made it through at the end of the day, that's a little bit unbelievable. I would rather prefer Izo stay alive, absolutely. So next up, we have Kinemon. And he was the official member of the Scabbards to be introduced, and he actually announced himself as a member of the Scabbards, as we see at Punk Hazard. So this is something that is, it's contentious, like, people are like, he really should have died there. And I will even say that, like, yeah, the reason that it was explained on how he survived, how, Kaido cut him in half, but, it was the same place where Law, separated his body, and I guess he didn't get put back exactly the way it was. Like, he was, like, a couple of centimeters off center when, he was popped back together, because I don't think it was Law that reassembled him at Punk Hazard. I think it was, like, Brook or Zoro or somebody, like, took his body and, like, reassembled it that way, okay? And because of that, like, they adjusted his body. It wasn't perfectly on there. So, Law's ability is so weird. But anyway, because of that, when Kaido cut him, he just sort of, like, separated and he fell down, but it was like a toy where you could just, like, pop him back together, I guess. And a lot of people were kind of calling bullshit on that, of just like, no. He should have died there, you know what I mean? And it's like, look, if he would have died, I'll say this much. If Kinemon would have died, I think I would have been okay with that. I wouldn't have been happy about it. Like, yeah, Kinemon finally kicked the bucket. Get him out of there. Because at the end of the day, you have Denjiro, who is also a very forward thinker in terms of, like, someone to lead the Scabbards. You could say Kinemon, you could say Denjiro. I think both of them really fit that, make that quality up. It also makes sense given the fact that Denjiro and Kinemon were the first vassals of Odin way back in the flashback. They were the first ones to actually follow Odin. So you could say, like, Kinemon was the original leader, and then he died, protecting Momonosuke, making sure that he became the shogun, and, he also had, he went up against Kaido in one-on-one single combat. I mean, like, that takes balls. And, maybe Oda, if Kinemon did actually end up dying, maybe he could have written in a scene where Kinemon has his last words to Momonosuke or something, and he grabs Momonosuke, and he's just like, Momo, you will be the shogun. You will avenge your father. I know you will be the greatest shogun ever. No! Dramatic music plays. Hallelujah! You know, and it's like, no, the lights come down, the Valkyria descend from Valhalla and carry Kinemon upwards, which doesn't make any sense because they're samurai. It's like, wait. We're doing Norse mythology for Japan? Okay, whatever. You know, it's like Kinemon's like, what? Huh? What is this happening? I don't know. It's just like, okay. But if Kinemon die, I feel like that would have fit, that would have worked in the story. You know, it's like we lost a really important figure in this, but you know, and it's somebody we've been with since pretty much the beginning of this Wano saga, since Punk Hazard. I mean, I'll put it another way. I think Kinemon's death would have been the only scabbard death that would have been, like, really impactful because we'd known him for so long. You know, like, that's why, like, Kanjuro's face turn was, like, such a big deal because it's like, okay, right after Kinemon, we met Kanjuro at Dressrosa. We've been with him for a long time. But if, like, Asura Doji or Kawamatsu, like, I would be upset because I really like Kawamatsu. But if Kawamatsu were to have died instead of, you know, anybody else, I would have felt like, okay, that sucks, but you know, we just met Kawamatsu in this arc. We didn't have, like, hundreds of chapters before this, you know, Punk Hazard, Dressrosa, Zoe building up this character, right? So, yeah, I think if any of the Scabbards were going to straight up die and have it be a really emotional death, it should have been Kinemon, but he didn't die. He made it through, and it seems like from the last chapter, he's going to be doing okay. So, yeah, that's Kinemon. Next up is Kanjuro. You know what? Looking back on it now, we all should have seen that face turn. I mean, the one member of the 9 Red Scabbards who is an actor by trade turned out to be a duplicitous traitor. Go figure, right? Now, I'm sure there's probably a lot of people out there that, like, from day one, they were like, I don't trust this Kanjuro guy. You know, like, I'm sure from day one, but it's like, that wasn't me. That wasn't a lot of other people, but, like, yeah. So basically, when we started to really get into that traitor subplot in Wano, like, who's the traitor? Who is it? You know, I started to think back, basically the same logic with Kinemon, like, which one of the Scabbards could be a traitor that would actually matter, that would actually make sense to the audience, you know? Like, oh, is it Asura Doji, the dude we just met? Like, that would be, like, kind of weak. So instead, it was like, okay, it pretty much has to be Kinemon, Kanjuro, or Raizo. Like, it just doesn't make any sense otherwise. And it turned out to be Kanjuro, and it's like, whoa. The only other person I think it could have really mattered, or, you know, instead of Kinemon would have been a big deal. What if it was Izo? That would have been interesting. If, like, Izo, after leaving Whitebeard's crew, was, like, a spy for Orochi or something, like, somehow, if that made sense. That would actually be really of a twist. Even more of a twist, I think, than Kanjuro becoming the traitor. But anyway, yeah. You know, a standard thing with Kanjuro is, like, okay, we beat him, you know, O-Kiku fights him, you know, knocks him down, cuts him, he's bleeding out, and they just leave him there in the snow, and it's just like, don't continue onward after this. And then he shows back up, and then, you know, boom, then Asura Doji apparently gives his life so that, you know, the other Scabbards could get away, and he takes out Kanjuro. And then, you know, Kanjuro's still alive after that, though, and like they fight again and again, and then he creates the Kanzimbo, and it's just like, at a certain point, you're just like, dude, how much gas does this guy have in the tank? You know what I mean? Like, jeez. It's just like, but hey, if nothing else, you could say Kanjuro was committed. You know what I mean? Like, he pushed for it. He's just like, I work for Orochi. My sole goal is to fan the flames of the Kurozumi clan's hatred, and that's what I'm gonna do, damn it. And that's what he did, right? Quite literally by creating the Kanzimbo, the living manifestation of the hatred of the Kurozumis for being persecuted for so many generations, okay? I mean, I'll say this at this point. Oda did a really fantastic job of showcasing the past and the life and times of each of the Scabbards, okay? What motivates them, what drives them, and each of their stories are pretty distinctive. You know, no two stories of the Scabbards are, like, so similar that, like, you know, yes, they all have that common thread of, like, we were vassals of Odin, we were loyal to Odin, we looked up to Odin. They all have that common thread. You know, at some point, Odin met them, and they were so, like, awestruck by his amazing manliness that they decided to join up with him or whatever. Or he saved them from, like, being orphans, like, as in the case with Izo and O-Kiku. But, you know, they all have that, but they all have their interesting stories. You know, like Kawamatsu has the story with protecting Hiyori for 7 years and then spending 13 years in a prison. Kanjuro has the story of his parents being killed by the Kurozumi hunters, basically, back in the day, right? And then him being all twisted up inside and stuff, and eventually going over to Orochi's side of things. Raizo has the moment where, he had, well, actually, his moment was actually just recent. His moment was the big moment with him gathering up the water at Zou of, like, I will not be caught with my pants down again, and then he uses, the elephant's bath to quench the fire. That was his moment. Denjiro's moment was just being Kyoshiro and playing 4D chess in the background the entire time, so they all have, I'm not going to go into every single one right now, but they all have their individual stories. Izo's story is all about the Whitebeard pirates. They all have their individual stories, and Oda focused on them long enough where we understood what they're all about without extending too much onto one scabbard, where it felt like, okay, we've spent like 3 chapters on Izo's backstory, but now we've spent 30 chapters on Kinemon's backstory. Can we just get to it? Each of them seem to have a very even keel of backstory given to them, and I like that. Some more than others, but yeah. So, after Kanjuro, we have Raizo, all right? And Raizo, as I said, is the MVP of this arc. I mean, really. I mean, the idea that Orochi starts this blazing inferno out of his hatred, and then Raizo defeats it with the power of, like, hope, basically. Hope and, like, 1 million tons of water. But hey, it works. And, it was also done in a way that I loved. It was not done in, like, a, like a Deus Ex Machina kind of way, where it's like, oh, by the way, I have all this water for no reason. No, it makes sense. If you were just in a massive fire that burned Odin Castle to the ground, and, like, all of the people you were meant to protect, like, perished or got separated in said fire, and then the next place you go, pretty much, like the very next place, they get sent into the future, and then they leave Wano, and then, Raizo ends up washing ashore at Zou, and he witnesses this eruption rain. This is like a week or two after the fire, from his perspective. So he's like, holy shit, if I only had access to this water back then, we would have been good. Hey, Inuarashi, can I take some of this? And he was like, I guess, we get some every day. It's literally just ocean water. And he's like, okay. And then he has the power of the scroll fruit, which is in of itself a very OP devil fruit. I made a whole video on that. So yeah, good for Raizo. Very dedicated to the way, the ninja way, as it were. I really liked his battle with Fuku Rokuju, not just because I like to say the name Fuku Rokuju, but no, seriously, I liked it because it was 2 different creeds of the ninja way. What is Raizo's ninja way? And it was like, you have Fuku Rokuju over here that's like, I am the vassal of Orochi. I follow Orochi. I follow whoever the shogun is. That's the idea you get from Fuku Rokuju. Like, he is vastly loyal, even to a fault, to the shogun. Doesn't matter if it's a good shogun or an evil shogun like Orochi. Doesn't matter if the policies themselves are going to destroy the nation of Wano, which is what Orochi was intending to do as like his end game. Doesn't matter. Fuku Rokuju will follow that person. And then meanwhile, Raizo is just like, that's not the way that ninjas should fight, And so they had their battle, which was pretty much just them standing there constantly with the paralysis jutsu. But literally ended with Raizo getting lit on fire. Yeah, and they were both getting lit on fire, but Raizo got lit on fire more, and then eventually Fukurokuju collapses. And then Raizo's just like, I endured the heat of Odin's pain, like a little bit of a fire is nothing. And then as soon as Fukurokuju drops, he's like, oh crap, I'm hot. He's like, on the ground, like, stop, drop, and roll or whatever. It's like, oh my god, I can't believe I was this close to dying there, But yeah, Raizo's pretty cool. You can't not love Raizo. He's awesome. Who's next? We have Inuarashi and Nekomamushi. So they were introduced at Zou. They had their big moment with Jack, and then that followed up with the Raizo is safe moment, which right then and there is a perfect setup for these characters, okay? They're vastly loyal because they're minks, because, they're a dog and a cat. They're animals, so therefore they be more loyal. Loyal to the point where they would, allow their entire nation to be wiped out if it meant protecting a friend. So that was one of the... Honestly, I'm not even kidding. Like, I've been debating about this for a while because I know this video is going to happen after One Piece is over. Like, after the story is over, you got to do, like, top 10 best moments in the entire story, right? and that's going to be difficult because it's a really long story. Going to be even longer by the time it actually ends. But the Raizo is safe moment, I think, has a really good shot of being on the top 10 best One Piece moments list. I don't know if it's going to be top 10 or top 20 or top 100. You know, it might have to be top 100. We might have to go down the charts. Top 100 songs of the 21st century, going right down the list. You know what I mean? Like, we might have to do something like that in order to really have it, you know, include everything, right? But it's definitely going to be on that list, absolutely. So I like that they're working together now. I guess they've set aside their differences and they've rekindled their friendship and everything now, so they'll be working together at Zou. You know, that's good. They got their vengeance on Jack. It was not something that was really focused on. You know, it was they fought Jack on the rooftop and they won in the Sulong form. So now it's like 1-1. You know, it's like Jack got the upper hand at Zou by using Caesar's gas weapon, and then Inuarashi and Nekomamushi got the one-up on Jack on the rooftop by going into their Sulongs. So that was good. So Jack comes back later, and then Inu goes to fight him, and it was that moment where it was like, hey, you know, Jack's like, you know, you don't have the moonlight in here to turn into your Sulong. And then Inuarashi's like, oh, it's funny, I was just thinking you don't have any gas weapons either, so we should be pretty even right about now, right? Which is funny because at the end of the day, Inuarashi just goes into his Sulong anyway to finish off Jack. He's just like, yeah, he's like, where's your gas weapon now? You don't get the gas weapon when the moon comes out. Guess what I get? You know, it's like, so that was pretty good. You know, it wasn't anything super dramatic, though. It wasn't like, you know, it was like, you know, Jack, you have taken out plenty of our brethren, of our minks on Zou, our family. We shall avenge them. You know, like nothing like that. It was just they fought, they won, and then Inu fights him later, and he wins, and then boom, that's the end of Jack. But I can't really think of anybody else to fight Jack. You know, Jack had to be defeated by either Nekomamushi or Inuarashi. I'm glad it was Inu because he was the first person to actually meet with Jack, and he tried to be diplomatic about this and tried to hey, because remember, he was even like, look, there's nobody named Raizo here, but if you want to look around, sure, just don't destroy our nation, please. And then Jack's response was like, mammoth, boom, and then like started blowing up buildings and shit. You know, Rashi's like, come on, man, that was the community center. We just built that. All right, and then, you know, then he has to, like, grab his tusk, or his not his tusk, his trunk, and then, you know, the fight gets on right then and there. So I'm glad Inuarashi was the one to finish him off. Let's see, what else? Their Sulong forms in general were just really badass to see. So Nekomamushi, I would say, had more, I think he's a little bit more of a fan favorite, honestly, because I feel, and I'd have to go back and check, but I feel like Neko gets a lot more screen time than Inuarashi does. You know, I feel like maybe the audience is like testing better with Nekomamushi, so Oda's including more of Neko. Neko was the one to actually announce to everybody at Onigashima, like, the battle's over, we won, right? And he's got a Catling gun, for God's sake. You know, Inuarashi's got, like, a peg leg sword, you know, but you know, Nekomamushi's got a damn minigun on his arm, you know? Like, that's cooler. I'm sorry. So, yeah, I think Nekomamushi might be the cooler one out of the two minks there. So let me know who you prefer. Who was your favorite? Then we have O-Kiku. I really love O-Kiku's character, you know, what she represents and everything. We sort of focus more on her in the earlier sections of Wano, and then after Udon, after we're getting into the actual battle, it's just, there's so many, and this was an issue I even brought up in another video, you know, there's so many moving parts that you really can't focus on everything. I just really hope that before we leave Wano, we get a few more moments of closure for each one of the Scabbards, and O-Kiku is included in that, okay? Because she lost a damn arm, all right? Yeah, Asura Doji might have died. We'll get to him in a moment, you know, but at the end of the day, and Kinemon, yeah, he might have gotten cut in half, but whatever. I guess it's every day of the week for Kinemon. But O-Kiku lost an arm. They could probably reattach it. I mean, Law is there. He is a surgeon. That's what he does. So if anybody could do it, I guess it would be Law, but he hasn't yet, so that makes me a little worried. Maybe too much time has passed. Because even Law's powers, he's not magic, guys, you know? I mean, like, if Kiku's arm got severed and it's, like, sitting around for, like, long enough, I don't think Law is going to be able to really do anything about that, right? It has to be kind of, like, reconnected right away or kept on ice or something, right? So O-Kiku just might not have an arm for the rest of her life or whatever. But anyway, we learn about her relationship with Kanjuro, okay? And that's going to be mostly the conflict there. And probably something she's going to have to live with through the rest of her life as well, because she could not finish off Kanjuro, and that might have resulted in Asura Doji's death, okay? And not even if Asura Doji is still alive, that was still a lot of damage that he suffered, and then Kinemon getting attacked as well, and then the Kanzenbo and all the damage that thing did and everything like that. So we learned that because Kiku was like the youngest member of that group back when Oden was like the initial group of the Scabbards. I don't think she was a Scabbard back then, but she was like Izo's younger sister, okay? So the idea goes that Kanjuro was basically her teacher, and like her big brother sort of figure and stuff like that. And so it made it even more, palpable when they actually had to fight. When it was revealed that Kanjuro was a traitor, Kiku felt like it was necessary for her, like, this is my mission. I need to be the one to take him down, to finish off Kanjuro, okay? And they fight in the snow, and she's O-Kiku of the lingering snow, and the battle is very epic, but mostly off-screen, and then it looks like she wins, and they walk away, and then Kanjuro comes back, and then O-Kiku now has to live with that, okay? That she just could not finish him off, all right? So, yeah, there's still some more stuff with O-Kiku there. I don't even know, like, I could see a moment at the end of the battle where, like, maybe they do find Kanjuro's body, and maybe it's, like, burned to a crisp or something, so it's not even, like, recognizable anymore. And that would make sense, given how in the past we see Orochi meeting Kanjuro, and he's just, like, the black blob, like the ink splat or whatever, like, he doesn't have a physical form. I don't think that's what he actually looked like. I think that's just Oda's representation of, like, he's formless. He can take whatever shape he desires, okay? And so after using the Kanzenbo technique, maybe he's on the ground all burned up, and we don't maybe even see his face. It's just the Scabbards look at his corpse, and it's just like, oh, wow, whatever. And they debate about what to do, because he was a traitor and everything. But what if O-Kiku decides to actually give him a proper burial? And so they actually properly bury him in maybe like an unmarked grave or something. They're not going to give him like an epic tomb or whatever, but like, they bury him in the ground and put like a post in it or something and just be like, this is where Kanjuro was buried. And it's just like, okay, maybe then like the last scene of Wano, or one of the last scenes with O-Kiku's story, could be like observing the grave. Oh, what would be really fun? Oda, if you could do this, like, it would be beautiful. Remember in Avatar: The Last Airbender when they had the Tales of Ba Sing Se episode? You see where I'm going with this. Yeah, you see where I'm going with this. If we could have maybe... You could probably do them all in like 2 chapters. Like you have 2 chapters, and the chapters are structured in a completely different way than a normal manga chapter, which is why this would probably never happen. But, like, we have little stories for each of the Scabbards, like, as a closure, as an epilogue for Wano, right? So, like, we have 2 pages, like, the story of Kinemon, and then Kinemon's story is told in, like, 2 pages, 3 pages, and then the story of Denjiro, and then we see Denjiro maybe working with Hiyori and planning stuff for the new Shogun and stuff. The story of Raizo, and then we see Raizo forming the new Oniwabanshu, the new, ninja squad for Momo instead, Shinobu's there and everything. The story of Nekomamushi and Inuarashi, and, like, they arrive back on Zou and stuff like that. Story of O-Kiku, or Kiku Nojo, and we see her like at the grave of Kanjuro crying and paying respects, and like that's the last shot. Like, dude, if something like that happened, I don't think Oda would do that, because it's like really breaking the format of like what the One Piece manga like is structured. I don't know how, like, I don't think Shueisha would go for that, but dude, that would be such a cool thing if we could see something like that. That was Kiku. Then we have Denjiro, or Kyoshiro. Hey, remember back when the first One Piece opening for Wano, Over the Top? Remember when that spoiled the reveal that Kyoshiro was actually Denjiro? I remember that. Oh my god, that was so weird, because that was like dozens of chapters before we found out that reveal. That was like a long time before the reveal, and it's like, oh yeah, Kyoshiro is Denjiro. It's like, okay, I guess. So his story is one of the most interesting out of all of the Scabbards, and I've made videos about it already, so I'm not going to go into super great detail. But just the fact he was one of the original Scabbards, him and Kinemon working together, he was a mystery for so long. He was, like, in a lot of people's minds, he was the last Scabbard to be revealed, and the first time we saw him properly, like, introduced was during Oden's flashback. We see, like, oh, a child from the capital, Denjiro, and he was scamming that one guy out of the silver pot or whatever to get money, you know? So that was like the first time we saw him, but then it's like, oh, no, we also saw him, you know, way earlier as Kyoshiro. We just never realized. But, you know, he was playing the long game, man. He was just like, I'm going to get in Orochi's good graces, and I'm going to be his right-hand man, and I'm going to wait for that perfect moment to cut his head off. He's like, not yet, not yet. And that takes a lot of restraint, too, given everything that Orochi did to them, given the fact that literally Denjiro's face contorted out of rage for Orochi. Then he went to go work for the dude for 20 years. You know, it's like, that takes some restraint, Denjiro, but man, it's awesome. And I think if Momonosuke is smart, he would have Denjiro as his main advisor, you know, even more so than Kinemon, because Denjiro has been with the people for 20 years. He was also the Ushimaru Koza. He was like the Robin Hood figure, you know, the witching hour boy was one of the translations. He was like that figure going around Wano, stealing money from the rich, giving it to the poor, that kind of stuff, you know. But then, of course, you have the Robin Hood paradox, which is like, wait a second, if you gave money from the rich and gave it to the poor, then the poor are now rich and the rich are now poor. What? I remember there was like I had a whole philosophy class in college, and we spent like a whole class just talking about the problems with like Robin Hood. Not even that, because that's not even such a big one. The major one is like, I'll pose this question to you. Okay, we're in philosophy class now. Where are my glasses? I have to wear glasses if we're talking about philosophy. Okay. Okay, so here's a more important question involving the Robin Hood paradigm, okay? If Robin Hood, he's purportedly doing good, right? Because he's stealing money from the rich and he's giving it to the don't have enough to eat, don't have enough to drink, and, you know, live in hovels while the rich people are living in mansions or whatever. So he's taking money from them, giving it to the poor so they can eat and they can live a good life. Okay. However, in the process of doing this, though, what the rich people would probably end up doing is just hiring a guard force or police or like the sheriff of Nottingham or whatever, and they wouldn't go after Robin Hood. They would probably just go and beat up the peasants and steal back the money. So what Robin Hood has essentially done now has actually made life actively worse for the peasants. Because he goes up, he's like, peasants, here is 100 gold for you to live. And they're like, thank you, Robin Hood. And then they start spending the money. The next day, a bunch of burly guards showed up hired by the nobles. And it's like, hey, you stole our money, give it back. Boom! And then just like, now they're still poor and they have all the money got stolen back. And now they're on the ground bleeding. If not, some of them are possibly dead. So is Robin Hood a force for good? There you go. There's the philosophy question for the day. Okay, so anyway, was Denjiro doing a good thing? I mean, ultimately it worked out, but it's One Piece, you know? Okay. So I've made a lot of other videos on Denjiro, though, but I really liked his story, and I thought it was leading into Hiyori being the Shogun, but that didn't happen, so whatever. But, you know, the relationship that Denjiro had with Hiyori and, like, working together to bring down Orochi for all those years, it was very, very palpable, very interesting there. Next up, we have Asura Doji. All right, so is he dead? If any of the Scabbards would be dead at this point, I would say it would be Asura. He is the Scabbard I feel has the least development out of all of them. We find out a lot about him. It's just compared to the others relative, it's less from him. He used to rule over Curry as a bandit. Odin beat his ass. He joined up. We had a moment where he kind of like went up to Odin, I think, or went up to Kinemon or one of them and was just like, you know, I'm glad what happened. You know, I'm glad that Odin defeated me all those years ago. I'm glad that I'm working for you now. It's like I never thought my life could be something like this, where I'm like an educated samurai vassal of a daimyo, but here we are, right? So anyway, we also learn about Ashura's backstory and the troubles that, you know, his band had, you know, about 10 years after Odin's death, where they went out to sea to fight Kaido and they all died, and there's like a mass grave, and Ashura like shows Inuarashi and Kinemon the grave, and it's just like, you want me to work with you guys? Take a look at this. You know, this is real shit right here. This is not like, oh, okay, let's go fight Kaido, blah, blah, blah. No. Some of my best friends that I have worked with in my long years of being a mountain bandit are all dead here on this hillside because of what happened, because you guys got time traveled into the future. You got to skip over 20 years. It was over in a blink of an eye for you. I had to live through it, you know? And look at this. You know, it was like the dead bodies of all of my friends. So if we're going to do this, if we're going to get the band back together, and if we're going to go take down Kaido, you got to promise me your heart's going to be in it. We're going to go 100%. You understand the ramifications for if we fail. This is it right here. And so that's when Kinemon and Inuarashi, they agreed and stuff. But like, that's why, you know, Asura was not like amenable at first to be like, oh yeah, let's just, you know, get together and fight against Kaido. No, not like all the other Scabbards. Like Kawamatsu was like, oh yeah, let's jump at the chance to rejoin. Asura was a little bit more hesitant because he had to live through 20 years of hell seeing all of his friends die. Okay. So that's just how it went with Asura. But beyond that, we don't really get much more from him. And even the chapter that was named after him, you know, the head of the Head Mountain Bandits group, you know, Asura Doji was like the name of the chapter, when he like dive bombed on the actual, he was like, yo, belly flop onto Odin, the fake Odin, and he detonated. That chapter even wasn't really, I mean, it focused on Asura, but I think it focused on other stuff. Like, it wasn't as much on him, which was weird because whenever Oda has a chapter titled that, like, you know, this is the head of the ninja group, Raizo, you know, or whatever. Like, there was a chapter just called Raizo, and that was Raizo's epic moment with the water. Ashura's chapter, by comparison, didn't really seem to be focused on him that much. He was just like, you guys need to get away, and he jumps on the body, and it blows up, and he's just like, oh, and then that's it. And it's like, okay, yeah. Did we get anything else from him? I don't think we got like a deep, like introspective, like flashback with him in that chapter or anything. It was just him doing that. So we don't see him during the last chapter. We don't see him at the coronation. So I'm assuming he might be dead. If any of the Scabbards are going to be dead, I don't want Izo to die, and Kinemon's not dead. So I guess Asher is dead. Sorry, dude. Sorry. He's probably not, but he might be. I don't know. Anyway, then finally we have Kawamatsu, who I guess was chronologically the last one to be properly revealed. Because, you know, he didn't properly reveal until, like, way later into Act 2 with the Udon prison when they were finally freed. He came out, and we got to see Kawamatsu. And I love Kawamatsu's story, because it's different. It's different from all the others. You know, he's not a native to Wano. His mother, well, I guess his mother brought him to Wano when he was young, and they were living there in the woods, and the townspeople thought that they were, like, kappas or yokai because they were fishmen, and then, you know, his mother got killed for that reason, and then Kawamatsu was all on his own, ended up discovering Inuarashi Nekomamushi, and then joining the Scabbards later, right? But, you know, I like Kawamatsu's personality. I like his sword style. I was like, kappa, you know, whatever. And it really kind of, you know, it kind of irritates me a bit. You know, he didn't really get to do much throughout all of Onigashima. Not really. Anything at all. I mean, he fought Kaido. He used the river slash technique, which was cool. I think that's it. I think that's it. Yeah. Yeah, he used the river slice thing on Kaido. What else did Kawamatsu do? I mean, he was support. He was in the background the entire time, like in the festival hall, fighting against, you know, all of the waiters and the pleasures and the gifters and stuff. And he was like fighting alongside Hyogoro the entire time. So he was doing stuff. It wasn't like Kawamatsu was just there like picking his nose or whatever. But it's like, we don't really get anything more, you know, important with him. You know, we don't have like a chapter where, I think we had the one chapter where him and Hyo were thinking about Luffy's form. And it's like, oh, it looks like the Wisdom King. And like, well, wait a second. Doesn't Zoro also use the sword style very similar to Ushimaru? And he has the scar like Ryuma. And it's like, they were thinking about that, but that's not really a moment with them. That's really a moment about Zoro, if anything else, and his lineage, rather than like Kawamatsu actually remembering anything. We honestly find more about Kawamatsu's backstory through Hiyori, because Hiyori, you know, he was in charge of taking care of her, and I made a whole video about Hiyori, so I talk a lot about Kawamatsu's past there. But yeah, I thought he would just do some more stuff during the actual battle, but he was mostly just on cleanup duty with, you know, fighting against some of the lower tiered members or anything. He didn't fight against a Tobi Roppo or one of the All-Stars or anything like that. He didn't even like help out or anything. So, you know, that would have been cool. Like maybe Kawamatsu and Izo team up against the Cypher Pole Zero. Like Oda could have easily wrote that in. I think it would have been fine. He lost an eye, it looks like. I mean, his eye is bandaged. He might have lost an eye during the battle. So that's unfortunate for Kawamatsu. But yeah, I liked his backstory, though. It's just we found out a lot about him, but just that's actually a situation where a lot about the flashback, but in the present, he didn't really do all that much, unfortunately. But yeah, I'm glad he made it through the fight, though. I'm just glad he didn't die. All right, so Kawamatsu. You know what? It's not going to work out with Carrot, so I think Kawamatsu should join the Straw Hats. Why not? You know, then Jinbei and Kawamatsu could pal around. They could do some really cool combo attack in the water. All right, I'm moving. All right, Carrot, you're... Sorry, Carrot. I'm a Kawamatsu fan now. All right. Luffy 420. Luffy 420 is the dude that draws all this really cool artwork, like the paintings and everything like that. Luffy 420, get to work on a Kawamatsu art. The same format as this, please. You know, Luffy 420 there. Hashtag not a furry. Work on that. We Kawamatsu art right up there on that spot there, and we're good to go. Okay. So anyway, thanks for watching the video, everybody. I don't have horse facts for you today. Horse fact. Speed exists. There you go. Speed is a horse. Smile. She eats apples. She likes apples. She uses a bow. She knows hockey. That's pretty cool. Let's see. She's pretty hot. Yeah. She's got big legs, you know, because she's a horse, so it makes sense that she would have big legs to, you know, running power and all that. Yeah, okay. So anyway, thanks for watching the video, everybody. This will be Tekking signing out. Later.